Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Yesterday it was confirmed by Disney, it's official that R2D2 will be returning for the new Star Wars trilogy. Wow, what a warranty they must have on that droid. This thing has lasted from Anakin all the way through to apparently the next generation of Skywalkers. That's 3 generations of Skywalkers with one droid. That's amazing. I can see why from a merchandising standpoint and a business standpoint they would want to continue with the droid, but I don't really know how I feel about it actually. I guess because I felt, I guess there's no character development for a droid, so I really don't know how much he can contribute. I know he's beloved. When we were little, my sister loved the droids in Star Wars. They were her favorite, the droids and the Ewoks. So it's just funny to see what different fans gravitate towards. So even though I've never been a big, huge fan of the droids, I always prefer the Jedi and the human characters. My sister just loved, and Yoda too. She loved Yoda, anything small. So I guess, you maybe don't want to get rid of that. But I would hate to see R2D2 kind of turned into the Olaf of the Star Wars franchise, kind of, and I'm referring to that little tiny snowman character in Frozen. So I just don't know quite how I feel about it. I guess it's good to have some consistency, but I'm hoping that, I guess it depends on what side of the story you gravitate towards. I want to see more human consistency. I want to see Harrison Ford come back. But at the same time, this is going on in Legend of Korra, if you've been following my coverage of that show. That show has made a very distinctive break in its season finale from the original Avatar: The Last Airbender series with Aang, the Avatar. And basically, for those of you who aren't fans of the show, they had 2 different trilogies basically, and the first trilogy wrapped up, and the second trilogy, the fan base was like, oh, these new characters are great, but what happened to our old favorites? And I think it's weighed the new show down. So now that I think about it, and R2D2, this news kind of makes me think about it, will that be a problem with Star Wars? And was that a problem perhaps with the prequels? They were stuck having to, since they were prequels, they had to adhere to what we knew was already going to happen. But this could be a fresh start for the Star Wars franchise to create new exciting things, just the way Nolan's Batman did, or Sam Mendes, well, I guess with all due respect, Martin Campbell's Bond from Casino Royale, to cast off, the things that are weighing down the franchise, even if they're weighing them down with love. I think that's important. And J.J. Abrams has had that problem as well with the way he handled Star Trek, where Star Trek was not rebooted, but created an alternate timeline, and he still finds himself weighed down by what happened in the original series. And I think that hurt Star Trek Into Darkness, and I think a lot of people do, that, Khan was a discovery that wasn't really organic to the new series. They were just like, it's Khan! Wink to the audience. Let's go call up Spock Prime and have him fill us in. So I think that as much as I would love to see all these things return from the original Star Wars films that I love so much, maybe, just maybe, I need to just let that go and just enjoy a new Star Wars film that is free to tell a great story. Because when I think about people like Daniel Day-Lewis or Benedict Cumberbatch or Saoirse Ronan joining the cast, or maybe this new find they're looking for, maybe we should give them a chance to just tell this new story and see what's going on with them, and not everything has to revolve around the Skywalkers and the Solos. So that's the first story for the day. Something to think about. To be honest with ourselves as fans. The second story of the day is that, well, R2D2 isn't going anywhere. Terrence Howard did not stick around. His warranty was not, he should really file the warranty with Marvel Studios, because apparently he had one, and that's in the form of a contract. Now, basically, in promoting Best Man Holiday, for those of you who haven't heard, Terrence Howard decided to finally say why he did not re-up to play James Rhodes in Iron Man 2, and what in the series in general, because of course Don Cheadle, the role hasn't really become anything to write home about. I don't think he's missing out on a whole lot. Don Cheadle was very minimally used in Iron Man 3. He doesn't even show up in the Avengers. I think Falcon's going to get the call for Avengers 2 anyway, if at all, because they are bringing in more characters for that. So anyway, Terrence Howard said, I had a contract that said I could go for the next 3 films with certain salary raises built in. But when Robert Downey Jr., they were going to make Iron Man 2 because the first one was such a success, Robert Downey Jr. said he wanted more money. Marvel took it from my contract, and they came back to me and said, this is what we're going to pay you, contract be damned. So Terrence Howard said, we have a contract, no thank you, and they replaced him. And Terrence Howard said he was particularly hurt because he had helped, he claims, helped Robert Downey Jr. get the role in the first place, which at the time was a big gamble for Marvel. And Downey Jr. had campaigned for it very hard. Now, I have to say, that sounds pretty bad. At the end of the day, though, I mean, like, I guess you might say, well, he had a contract. How could they not honor the contract? But, you know, Terrence Howard then would be forced to sue, and you don't really want to sue in Hollywood. I think it gives you a stigma. And J. Michael Straczynski had a really good quote that I really liked when people were complaining about what happened to Alan Moore and DC with the Watchmen contract. People were saying, oh, they took advantage of Alan Moore, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And even if that's all true, J. Michael Straczynski said quite wisely, and Straczynski works also in Hollywood. He does like Babylon 5, he wrote Changeling, you know, so he works in different areas of the industry. He said, at every point in your career, you sign the best contract you can at that moment. And sometimes you just don't have the pull, you know, you don't have the cachet to maybe get the best contract. And sometimes your contract does suck a little bit, but you need to sign it anyway to move forward. And Watchmen did really help Alan Moore's career significantly, and he got a lot out of it. And of course, going forward, he signed much better contracts. So I think the situation is that Terrence Howard, as successful as he was to get the role in the first place for Jim Rhodes, he just basically wasn't a big enough star to say, hey, you can't do this to me, and he wasn't a big enough draw to the franchise. As we can see, replacing him with Don Cheadle hasn't hurt the franchise at all, and no one's even really that upset about it anymore. It's not a problem for anyone. At least not in the effect that it hurts ticket sales. So Terrence Howard just was stuck. And that's just, it's an unfortunate way the hierarchy of the business works. Now, should he have talked about it? And that's another reason I'm bringing this up, because also this week, Frank Darabont, in promoting his new show Mob City, or miniseries on TNT, I believe, has been talking about The Walking Dead a little bit and being a little more vocal about what happened there behind the scenes with AMC. And I think that at the end of the day, it's just not professional to trash talk what happened to you in contracts and behind the scenes at business. Because business it's a small world, it's a small town, every business is small. And I think that, you know, even if you're getting screwed over, because as many of you know, I was let go from Marvel, and I never will talk, you know, about the details publicly about what happened, even though I felt that I had an unfair situation. And I just think that it's just not professional, and I think it hurts people going forward knowing if they can deal with you, because you're just going to go and tell everybody what's going on. And business can be tough, business can be mean, business can be dirty. And you just have to, I think success is the best revenge. And I think that Terrence Howard had a great weekend this weekend. He doesn't need to sully it by trash-talking Marvel Studios. Maybe he should go cozy up to DC and see if he can get a gig with them, because clearly he's still a draw, and look how well he did here. And then also, I think with Frank Darabont, the best thing he can do is have another hit show and prove that he was what made Walking Dead successful. So I think that's what people should do, and I think that, you know, anybody, you should be, you know, always try to follow a professional code. Just so that, you know, you can keep your rise above it all. It's just, I don't think, not a good idea. And you might argue, well, the other people aren't being professional, but I think that you know, going forward, reputation is really important. All right, so that's the second story of the day. The third story of the day, it's a little bit of a light news week, I think, because we're heading into Thanksgiving here in the United States. The town, Hollywood, kind of shuts down a little bit for the holidays, so get ready for some light movie news episodes, morning movie news episodes. But over in Bollywood, they have a big hit with the film, and I have to refer here a lot because I want to make sure I get the facts right. I'm covering a movie industry that I'm not totally familiar with. It's Krrish 3. And Krrish 3 has become the highest-grossing Bollywood film of all time domestically. It beat a film called Chennai Express, which I believe is kind of a more traditional drama, whereas Krrish 3 is a superhero film. It's an Indian superhero film. I think that's just absolutely phenomenal. It stars Hrithik Roshan, I think. He was in the film Kites. He is the son of a very successful Bollywood director, composer, you know, multi-hyphenate talent over there. And actually, if you might recall back when Prince of Persia came out, this guy, his son, was my pick to play the Prince of Persia instead of Jake Gyllenhaal. And as you can see over in Bollywood, he is quite successful. He's the star of this film. It's the third film in a series. It's about an Indian superhero, and it has become the highest grossing film, as I said, in Bollywood history. If you want to see the trailer, it has English like title cards, but for some reason the trailer isn't in English, but I've put a link below in the video description where you can watch this trailer. It was made for $20 million American. But then interestingly, being the highest grossing film of all time in Bollywood, it only made around $36 million. So I'm not quite sure how that works out in terms of making a profit for them, because I'm not quite sure what percentage they get to take. Here it works out to about 50% by the end of the run of a movie, although that might be changing a little bit actually with movies being so front-loaded. But, you know, studios don't get the entire box office gross worldwide or domestically, and I don't know how it works in Bollywood. But it's interesting to see at what level they're operating there in terms of their box office. That the biggest film of all time is 36 million American. But kudos to them. I think that's fantastic. It just shows how superhero movies are doing well globally, and that there's a big market for them. And also you can see why you're not seeing a lot of Indian actors in American films, because clearly there's not a lot of money in the Bollywood box office, even though there is, for instance, in China. In China, a film can easily make over $100 million, close to what you need to make here in the United States. So you can just see what's going on. And I think it's interesting to just take a snapshot look at what's going on in other film industries. In Bollywood, of course, while it might not be on the same level in terms of revenue as the United States or China, is obviously a very respected industry that makes great films, is very prolific, and moviegoing is a very popular form of entertainment in India, which I think is great. And so kudos to them, and I'm glad they have their own superhero. I think it's great to see these companies doing that. I think the special effects look a little bit not so great, but hey, for 20 million, they look very good. All right, so that's the 3 stories of the day. The question comes from Sean HK. Sean says, question: why has TV replaced movies as the media to tell adult stories? Books like Game of Thrones have been made into TV shows, where in the past they would have been made into movies. Why the sudden change? Well, I think let's talk about just Game of Thrones. I think it would be hard for Game of Thrones to be made into a movie after Lord of the Rings, because I feel like a lot of studios, it's a huge investment, and also they would feel, well, we already have Lord of the Rings. Do people really want another series like that? Second of all, it was a great gamble for HBO, so for them it was worth taking a risk, and they needed to do something big like that to kind of detract from Mad Men on AMC. You might recall that until Game of Thrones came out, HBO was struggling for dominance with AMC, which had picked up Mad Men that HBO had passed on from Matt Weiner, who had worked on The Sopranos, their show. So that was kind of embarrassing for them. But now I think they've definitely tipped the scales back in their favor with the phenomenon that is Game of Thrones. And I don't really know if Game of Thrones could work as a movie, and that's another reason. When you have these sprawling novels, these series, the reason it works so well for TV is because they have so much time to tell the story. You can really tell more of a story. Movies don't have to be special effects. They don't have to be. Television shows aren't reliant on big special effects and money shots, as we've been saying, whereas a television show can take its time, and writing is the most important element, I feel. Great lines. Although those dragon shots on Game of Thrones are pretty sweet. So anyway, I think that kind of started the trend, Breaking Bad, and these shows have become so hugely successful out of desperation. You might recall that Breaking Bad was not a huge hit when it started. Game of Thrones, as I said, was a desperate bid by HBO to reclaim the top spot in terms of television shows. But they're so successful, these two shows, that it's kind of created a vacuum that everyone is being sucked into television now because they see how much fan interest there is. You can almost get I think media has been recovering the fact that you can almost get a more intense fan out of television these days than you can out of a movie. A movie is fleeting. I mean, I think that there are fans of franchises, but everything has become very serialized. For instance, everyone pays attention to movie franchises instead of individual films. So that's almost creating their own kind of version of a television series. And then also, I think Game of Thrones, for instance, is considered, I think, one of the most socially interactive products at all, movie or television out there, and I believe Breaking Bad is also up there. So I think that that's why TV has come in front, I think just from success, sheer success, and the way they dominate the headlines and media and audience attention. So that, I mean, everybody always goes where the money is, and so that's what's happening right now. And as for why you have more adult entertainment there, I think it's because, first of all, I think adults are reluctant to go out to the movies as much as younger teens and 20-something moviegoers, because they are out all day working. They just want to relax at home. They don't like sometimes the crowd at the movie theaters or how dirty they get. Whereas teenagers are like, I'm free. I can go out. I'm without adult supervision. Let's go see Carrie, or let's go see Avengers. I want to see a horror movie. I guess Carrie didn't do particularly well at the box office. I want to see Hunger Games or Evil Dead the remake. So those are the films that you're seeing do very well at the box office. Whereas it's really hard to get an adult to go to the movies. I don't know why. I don't know why they decide they don't want to partake in society as much. I think that it hurts them. I think it's like almost like voting. You have to vote with your ticket money. So I think if you don't go to the movies, you can't really complain about what's playing there because you're not going. You're not affecting the business. But at the same time, I am aware that there are a lot of economic concerns. Adults have a lot more things they have to worry about. They have concerns, and I think that's also really important. And Hollywood should pay attention to that with the incredibly high rise of mounting price of going to a movie. It's getting very expensive. So TV is largely usually free or much cheaper, and you can binge watch. It's just, I think that's what's going on. And so you had a lot of great content go there, and that's where the adult audience is. And then you had these and then there's time to tell great stories. You have, as opposed to 3 hours max in a movie, you have like 13 or 14 hours, or maybe some, because that's how long, usually I think sitcoms run about 22, 23 episodes, but those are half hours, and TV shows, like an hour-long show that's on not network, but on cable or pay cable, or even Netflix, they usually run about 13 episodes. So that's 13 hours of program where you can really flesh things out and have some great character development. So I think people, for instance, talked about The Red Wedding more than pretty much anything, or as much as certainly any movie, and that's really impressive. So movies, I think they need to step up the bar on quality, but I thought The Hunger Games: Catching Fire was almost a perfect film. So I hope this is maybe the beginning of maybe a trend of going back to that. So it's great to see the great movies still can be made. So that's today's morning movie news. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Write down below what you think of today's 3 top stories, as well as the viewer question, and anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.